Hi guys, it's Jeffrey and welcome to a new Boy Reads World video. Apparently July is over, so here's my wrap-up video. I read a grand total of 6 books in July, which isn't all that bad considering I went to a couple of festivals, I went on holiday, so yeah, 6 books isn't really that bad. And the first book that I read on the 4th of July, because, you know, we didn't have barbecues and fireworks over here, was Science Preceding, The End of the World by Yuri Herrera. This is a Dutch copy. This is by a Mexican author, and this is about a girl who travels from the heartland of Mexico to the United States to find her brother who has left Mexico a couple of years before that. And although this is a book about crossing borders and going to another country, I found this a very intimate and quiet book, because you just follow the girl who is called Makina, and you just hear her voice and what she's going through. And this is about she has built a life for herself in Mexico, but finds it really necessary to go find her brother and to know what has happened to him. I give this 4 stars because I found it a really heartfelt, intimate novel, which about a topic that you don't really read about a lot, because you always get the American point of view about how immigrants are perceived by the Americans, and not really about how the immigrants see immigration, how they have to leave their home country behind to find something better, or in her case find her brother. So yeah, this was a really good, fascinating read. Then the second book that I read in July was The Clasp by Sloane Crossley. I hadn't heard of this book before Booktube, but Nena from SES Reads recommended this on her channel. And I have to say this was a good read for the summer. It was a light beach read, although I didn't read it on the beach. This is about 3 college friends who reunite for another friend's wedding in Miami. But all 3 friends are a bit disappointed about how their lives have turned out. One friend isn't really doing the job that she was expecting to. The other friend hasn't made it as an actor as he hoped to. And the third friend, who is a bit of the protagonist, I feel, he's really disappointed in life and disillusioned by the things that he has done or not has done. And so they convene at the wedding, and old feelings and memories and you know, the good old heyday of college is revisited. One of the friends, called Victor, starts talking to the mother-in-law of the bride, and she's a German woman, and she talks about how when she was in Paris, she saw an amazing necklace at her aunt's house, but then that got stolen. And then, considering that Victor doesn't have that much going on in his life because he's got fired and doesn't really have that much friends anymore, he decides to follow up the story and just travels to France to find it. And yeah, then a lot of adventure and shenanigans happen from there. So like I said, the light beach read. You won't find any deep truths or life lessons in this book, and I gave it 3 stars. Then I read my favorite book of the years thus far, and that's H is for Hawk by Helen Macdonald. I was one of those people who initially thought that a book about a hawk was fascinating about that, but it's so much more than just a book about a hawk. It's about how Helen Macdonald lost her father and just couldn't cope with his death because he was her best friend, and they did all sorts of things together. He was a photographer, and when she was young he took her on his adventures and on his photo shoots, and just, you know, things in general, a very close father and daughter bond. And when he dies, she decides that she wants to train a goshawk, which is apparently one of the most difficult birds to train, and she's already a falconer, so it's not like she goes into this blind and just decides to, you know, let's train a goshawk, because people just don't do that. She has the basic skills, and to train a goshawk you just have to be very committed and very patient. He stays indoors with his hawk for months at a time and just tries to become one with the hawk, that the hawk trusts her. And all of that helps her in a way, but on the other hand, it also alienates her from the real world, and it just means that she stays inside and just is alone with her thoughts, which isn't, I find, the best way to mourn somebody. And in the book she starts to realize that just cooping herself up with this hawk isn't the best thing to do. She so she reaches out to friends and family, but while still training the goshawk. And this was one of the most heartfelt books that I've ever read, because you know that she is writing it from the heart, from what she has felt, from the suffering and pain that she has felt when her father died, and this goshawk helps her to grieve her father. I recommend this to everybody, even though, like me, you're not really convinced at first that, you know, training a goshawk is the ideal way to grieve somebody, but it turns out for her it was the best idea she ever had. Then Booktube came around and I had 7 books planned, 2 of which I actually read. The first one was The Dinner by Herman Koch, which I had only read Summer House with Swimming Pool by him, which I found a much better book than this one, because Herman Koch is very good at writing these irritating, unsympathetic characters which you still have a bond with, which you still want to like, but you know that they're just big assholes. So in The Dinner he also uses a couple of these persons, and I think if I hadn't read Summer House with Swimming Pool, I would have enjoyed this more. After reading Swimming House, I know what he is capable of, and in this book he tries the same thing, even though he has written this earlier. He just does it a lot better in Summer House. This is about a dinner, way to state the obvious there, between 2 couples who are related, and their children have done something really horrible, and it's about how they are going to deal with the aftermath and how they are going to make it public or not, because one of them is a famous politician. While the evening continues, a lot of more absurd and not so great ideas are put on the table, and you're just thinking that, you know, you're not going to do this, are you? And then they are going to do this, and you're just like, yeah, you are not kind people. But that's the strength of Herman Koch, I think. But yet again, he does it a lot better in Summer House. So if you want to read something by Herman Koch, I recommend that one. Then I spent the remaining 6 days of Booktubeathon reading Harvard Square by André Aciman, because I just had such a hectic schedule. But in a way I'm glad that I had to spend 6 days reading this, because this is such a slow burning book. André Aciman is very good at writing those small scenes and small moments that can alter a relationship between those 2 people. And this is about, I think this is a bit autobiographical, because this is about an Egyptian man who goes to America and gets a scholarship at Harvard University, but in the summer months he stays there while all of his friends and professors go on holiday and go back home. But he doesn't have the chance to go home, and he just stays at Harvard Square and meets in one of the dive bars there a Tunisian man, and who drives a taxi and is a bit of a slob and a bit dirty, and who isn't somebody who the main character usually frequents at Harvard. But they start talking because they both have that North African background, they both speak French, they are both far away from home, and that really builds their relationship. And although the main character is a bit embarrassed to be seen hanging out with him, he still can't help but going back to that dive bar knowing that the other one is going to be there. And somewhere halfway in the book it starts becoming clear that the other man, called Kalash, isn't going to stay in the United States because he's going to be evicted. You see that their relationship is starting to differ a bit. It's not you're not sure if somewhere along the way their relationship starts to become a bit more sexual or a love relationship, although they really love each other, but you're not sure if it's in a friend way or something more. But that's also a strain of André Aciman, I think. His other novel, Call Me By Your Name, was also about a gay relationship, but this is very much more nuanced. You never see anything more than them meeting up and talking to each other. This is a very dialogue heavy book, but you never see anything more than that. There's one scene in the bedroom in which the main character comforts Kalash because he's about to get evicted, and that's a very heartfelt, emotional scene. But also you might guess that something more happens there, but you're not sure. So yeah, a very nuanced book, but I also gave this 5 stars because I really enjoyed it. I really savored the dialogues. I read a couple of dialogues again, a couple of pages. I went back, I went forward. It's just, yeah, I just love André Aciman. And then there was one book that I had included for the Booktubeathon but didn't finish and read after the Booktubeathon, and that is Wat alleen horen by Saskia De Coster, and this can be roughly translated into What Only We Can Hear. And this is about an apartment building, but it's never actually stated where it is, but you might guess that it's in Brussels. And at the beginning of the book, the people who live there get the notification that they're about to be evicted in a month or 6. So they have that time to either find a new place or, you know, do everything in their power to stop it from happening. But you get the idea pretty quickly that protesting isn't going to help much. And these inhabitants, you follow a couple of 5, 6 inhabitants, I think. There's an old guy who just listens to cassette tapes from the time that he worked on oil rigs off the coast of Nigeria and Angola. And this was my favorite character because he starts to get a bit of dementia, and this is his way to just cling on to the past. And he has a wife who is from Nigeria, who he met while working off the coast there. But she starts to slip away from him, and by listening to those cassette tapes, because he recorded everything that he could. He just listens to the first time that he met her. He listens to a couple of tapes of old loves that he once knew. Yeah, a very intriguing character. And then there were also a couple of other characters, like an over-the-hill radio presenter with an autistic son. There was also a writer who had writer's block. There was a guy who was the concierge of the building but didn't really care that much. Except for the old guy, the other people were a bit stereotypical and I didn't care for them that much. That made me a bit flipping through the book, just going to the parts with the old guy but then flipping back because something had happened and I hadn't read it. So I only gave this 2 stars, which is a pity because I actually would just have liked a book about the old guy named George and his cassette tape. So yeah, that's a pity though, because I liked her previous book, but yeah, what can you do? So those were the 6 books that I read in July. I'm also currently still reading Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari because this is such a dense book, and this is the history of mankind for the past 10,000 years, so I'm quite savoring it. And also this is just full of facts, so if you read too many pages at once you just start forgetting it all. I also started reading Middlemarch by George Elliot yesterday because Rinsey over at Rinsey Reads, I'll link her channel down below if you haven't noticed her yet on Booktube, has started Middlemarch Madness for August. And we're reading this quite slowly, which is good for me because I started reading this a couple of months ago, and I found the language in this very challenging because, you know, the English that I learned isn't really the English that is used in here. Sentences like "women regarded such frippery as the ambition of a huckster's daughter" really had me grabbing for the dictionaries. And then the third book that I'm currently reading is Black Deutschland by Darryl Pickney. This is about a young gay black man who travels to West Berlin in the late 80s, just before the wall falls. This is about him trying to discover the Berlin that Christopher Isherwood described in his novels, but alas, the Berlin that he lands in is not the Berlin that Isherwood described. And although I'm only 50 pages in, this has not been the book that I was expecting. I was expecting a bit more debauchery, a bit more raunchy, but this has primarily been him going to work for an architect, and him staying in with his stuck-up cousins. So yeah, not the book that I was expecting. But those were the 6 books that I read in July and the 3 that I'm currently reading in August. If you have any comments or recommendations based upon those books, please leave them down below. If you like this video, the red subscribe button is free, and I'll see you in my next video. See you soon!